Good evening, and welcome to Seven Stories Up, Eloghosa Osunde, and Jake Morrissey, Necessary Fiction. We are delighted to have you all join us tonight at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Candace Aliseo Roman, and I am an Adult Services Librarian at SNFL. Before we begin, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this evening's conversation possible. I would like to encourage you to visit NYPL's website and take a look at future Seven Stories Up programs. We have an excellent lineup featuring up-and-coming literary voices, one-of-a-kind performances, and hopefully future award-winning nonfiction. We would love for you all to join us again. It's now my pleasure to introduce tonight's speakers. Eloghosa Osunde is an award-winning writer and multidisciplinary artist. Winner of the MOAD's African Literary Award, the Plimpton Prize for Fiction, and the ASME Award for Fiction. They are the author of critically acclaimed novel Vagabonds, which was a New York Times Editor's Choice and a New Yorker's Best Book of the Year. Their writing has been published in Paris Review, Granta, Best American Short Stories, Georgia Review, Guernica, and elsewhere. They move between Nigeria, Nairobi, New York City, and wherever else their work calls. Jake Morrissey is an editor and writer for the last 20 years for Riverhead Books, where he edits both fiction and nonfiction by a variety of authors, including Marlon James, James McBride, Annie Lamott, and Daniel H. Pink. Without further ado, please enjoy this evening's conversation.
I just want to say, I am, as I said to Eloghosa earlier, I'm the least interesting person here tonight because obviously the way I look is not exactly genre bending, shall we say? Anyway, but the reason I am really happy to be here is that they did the work that I responded to. And so this is, for me, an interesting way to talk about how a talented writer understanding their process and talking about their process. Because for me, as somebody who's been doing this for so long, I'm always fascinated by the creative, where the work comes from, where the novel or the nonfiction book comes from, and how it's translated through a person's individual experience. So Necessary Fiction, if you've not read it, by the way, today is their pub date. Today is Necessary Fiction's pub day. So congratulations. So what I wanted to talk first from Eloghosa is the idea that that what made you decide that this was the book you needed to write right now? What was the mitigating force that came to you that you thought you needed to put pen to paper or cursor to screen?
I'm trying to be serious right now.
Desperation is emotional neediness. Where are we here? What's going on?
Like I was saying yesterday, I think this one felt like the book I needed to write in order to get to the other book.
To get it out of yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, does this work?
There we go.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, so this is a book I needed to write to get to the other books I have to write. It felt like the most sort of like pressing work for me at the time. And so even though I was trying to escape it and I was trying to write, short stories or like a novella or a fun novel, this came out instead. So that was what was going on with
And
me
you
at the time.
can't keep it from you. In other words, it bubbled up like it always was with you. It wasn't as if you kind of could put it aside and say, I'm going to do something else.
Yeah, exactly. Because after Vagabonds, I actually was working on 2 manuscripts. Okay. And one was lighter than the other. And needless to say, this is not the lighter.
This is not the lighter. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've worked with other authors who will say, I started writing, and 80 pages in, I had to set it aside because this wasn't. It was false. It wasn't true. Mm-hmm. And this is many, many things, one of which is true. And so when you and I have talked about this before, for you, character comes first. Mm-hmm. In other words, it kind of percolates up, and you see and feel and hear the characters. what comes after character?
Oh, I like that question.
Setting, plot, tone.
Tone, I think. Yeah, I think when the characters become clear, what happens next is then I try to figure out how they're connected,
Yep.
how they relate with each other, how they speak or sound. And so I think all of those things, clarifying those things is how I end up with like the eventual texture of the book.
Right.
And so sometimes the book is slower than another. Like this one, for
Right.
instance, is very like punchy from the beginning. And so when I got to know the character and got to understand how he speaks, I feel like the rest of it was just kind of figuring out the rhythm. Actually, what comes next is rhythm.
Rhythm.
Yeah. And so, like, if someone like Ziz comes out straight with a story like Good Boy, what happens after that? And how does that sustain the reader's attention over time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because one of the really interesting things, well, I should step back. As a book editor, I always look for an author or book or story that I have not heard before, that I've not read before. And we at the, I work at Riverhead Books, and we sort of intentionally try to find what we call urgent, unheard stories. And I'm sure it will come as a shock to you to hear me say that I had not read, come across a novel about characters growing up, living, loving in Lagos, Nigeria, in a world where I was not aware of any of the sort of opportunities, challenges, what it means to be to choose the family and the people that you're in. And also the other side of what is that once you make choices, other choices are not available to you anymore for various reasons. So it's an amazing exploration of a world and a set of characters that I had not come across before. So and one of the things that we included in the book, listen to me, they included in the book, it's all because of me, is that there is a cast of characters in the beginning, which is fascinating to me because in addition to kind of its description of who these characters are and how they're connected to each other, were there particular characters that you found easier to write than others? Did you feel that there were people who were harder to pull out of yourself?
Yeah, there were definitely differences in terms of like difficulty. Ziz was very easy to write because he speaks in first person all the time and he tells you everything.
And jumped out first.
Yeah, exactly. Some other characters were harder to write, like the ones who don't speak for themselves and who rely on the perspectives of their loved ones to like gain shape.
Okay, it's really interesting you put it that way. Yes, because I have when I was editing the book, I thought there were, and this image is probably not going to make sense to anybody, but there are characters who come out fully formed. I mean, you can sort of see them in 3 dimensions, and then there's characters you can't really see, but you can see their outline by other people. It's like they framed you around them, and that to me is really interesting to kind of see the different dimensions that these characters have. Were there people that you liked more than you expected, characters you liked or didn't like more than you expected? Because I, of course, have opinions about all these people.
I really want to hear some of your opinions.
Not in this public sphere. This is all about you, Eloghosa. This is not about me.
I really would like, for us to talk,
Yes.
both talk about the book so
Right.
that, I would find that more interesting.
Okay. Well,
'Cause
one
I'd
of the
like
things
to-
that interested me as I have because I'm parent, there are characters in this novel who have very complicated relationships with their parents, with their mothers and their fathers, because they are queer. Their parents have different views of how they live their lives and what is appropriate for them for the parents to think of the children think of the parents. Did you find it difficult to write parents or older people? Because you obviously are young and come from a different experience than the kind of the traditional sense of what a family looks like, what you expect out of your children, and how all of that kind of evolves.
First of all, hi everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. And I hope you're enjoying the conversation so far. Thank you. Parents, was that hard to write? I wouldn't say so. Well, Isoken was very hard to write because she is she's a mother who struggled with her own choices.
Yes.
And so that impacted how she could relate with her own child. Yes. She was hard to write because she reminded me of people that I know. And she reminded me of how I experienced certain things. So it was hard to write from her perspective instead of the perspective of her child. Right. Because then what that meant was that it gave her more complexity, which made me more empathetic about things that I had experienced in my own life. And so I would say that writing parents who have caused, pain because of their pain was difficult for me to write, because then in order to do it well, you actually have to feel what they were feeling, or you have to be open enough to look beyond what was done, to you. You have to be able to think about this character as being their own person, with their own backstory, with their own history, with their own darknesses, I guess.
Yes.
So those ones were she was one of the parents who was hard for me to write.
Interesting, because the structure of this is I would imagine. Well, we'll talk about this in a minute, but it's very there's a lot of overlapping stories and experiences with these people in the novel. So you meet people, and then you might not see them for a while, and then you bump into them again. And so it's very messy emotionally, and that is kind of like life. And so the idea of having parents and children who are disappointing each other, disappointing themselves, finding their own happiness, finding their own satisfaction, or understanding their children or each other or their parents differently. They're all in the process of kind of evolving of who they are, and it's a fascinating look at a world that in Nigeria, which makes me actually ask you, how much of a character, if you will, is Lagos in the novel, do you think? Is the setting, because it's so vibrant and so part of all of these characters, is it as much a character as it is a setting?
I wouldn't say that in this book. I would say that in Vagabonds, Lagos was a character. In this book, Lagos is the backdrop of all these characters' lives, and so it kind of operates more as a setting here than as a character. But then also, because of the kind of city it is, I think it shows up anyway. It mingles with the lives of characters anyway. So in that sense, yeah. But I'm curious about something which I don't think I've asked you outrightly before. So some people say that because of the way I structure stories, they would have appreciated the warning that, it reads like a short story collection.
Oh, give me a break.
But I do remember asking you about this when you read Necessary Fiction and saying, what do you think we should call it? Do you think we should call it a novel in stories? Do you think we should call it a collection, a linked collection? Or do you think this is a novel? Because I think it's a novel. And then you said it is a novel.
It did.
So can you tell me why?
Well,
you
it's a
would say
little
that?
bit like you get to define what you want to call your creation. And I think it is a novel. I mean, is it a traditional novel in terms of structure, the way, say, Pride and Prejudice is structured? No. Is it complex and overlapping and loud and quiet and scary and tender and angry? Yes, it's all of those things, sometimes in the same story. And the stories are presented as connected, but not necessarily this happens, and then this happens, and this happens. So you have to pay attention. Not that anybody cares besides me. The two pieces of advice I gave my daughters when they were growing up was make an effort and pay attention, which I think is actually two pieces of advice I would give any reader in the world. Pay attention to what you're reading and make an effort to understand what the author's trying to tell you. And I think for you, for this book, it is not, it's not something that the reader needs. The reader needs to sit up and take notice, because it's messy like life in terms of you never know who you're going to meet. So I do think it's a novel, and I do think it's the genesis of where these stories came from may not be the same way that Jane Austen may have written Pride and Prejudice, but it's much a novel in 2025, I think, in my view. Do you think that is as well? Yes.
Yes, I would say it's a novel. But
Well, these people have a lot of nerve telling you what they. Well, it's a little bit
they
like.
don't tell me, but I read some things,
Oh, the internet is a scary place. The internet is a frightening place here. Well, I mean, the idea. One of the things that's also fascinating about this novel that I didn't know is how dynamic and exciting a creative place Lagos is in terms of music and art
Commerce.
and exactly. And it's like this sort of dynamic center of kind of creativity. And did you draw on in sort of creating the backstories for these characters where they work in the music industry, or they're DJing or whatever it happens to be? Is this from your own experience, your own life, or is this something you observed over time? Where does your own experience go into this book, and where is your kind of created observations of where these people, of what they experienced or how they lived, where they come from?
I think it's all mixed up at this point.
Right.
But growing up in Lagos, something that was very clear was, people are going to find a way to make it somehow. And if something doesn't exist, they're going to make it anyway. And so that was fun to incorporate into the story. Like when Ziz started talking about himself as a hustler, I could see the kind of things that he wanted to do, the kinds of opportunities he wanted to create for the people he cares about. And so, yeah, I would say that it's a mixture of my experience with Lagos as a place that kind of forces you into innovation, and also my observation of Lagos as a place that, changes everyone that encounters it. Like even when people don't live in Lagos, when they visit it, they are presented with new choices, new options.
Oh, that's an interesting way of putting it.
Exactly.
Okay.
New options. And so you find yourself making choices that feel unlike you. Because that's
interesting.
Yeah, because that's just the container you're in.
Yes. So, all right. So let me step back. So the idea, one of the things that these characters grapple with is disappointment.
Yeah.
My family has turned away, turned their backs on me, or who I thought my child was or my parent was, turned out that they have a secret life.
Yeah.
They have lives that have nothing, or experiences, or they do things that that family members or loved ones had no notion of, or the idea of being, what does a traditional sense of being in a relationship look like? A child to a parent to each other, or whatever. And the idea that you can learn from this, it's not an end game. I'm disappointed and life is over. It's more about, all right, I'm learning something different about you, and I didn't know this. And that somehow is not necessarily positive. It's like, oh, we can all learn from this. And I think that's, I found it an unexpectedly hopeful aspect of the story, is that not every character has a happy ending. Not every relationship is let's hold hands while rainbows and unicorns jump around us. But at the same time, it's, you know what, these people have learned. They've loved, they love, their sense of themselves and each other have evolved, and that is not a terrible thing. I mean, there's no growth without change. And that, to me, is a kind of fascinating lesson that I, as a reader, took from this. Is that a happy byproduct, or do you think that was intentional on your part?
So sometimes I get this question of like, what do you hope people will take away from the book?
Right.
I have no hope in that sort of like way. But it was something I was considering when I was writing the book. So if, for instance, there is loss involved in a dynamic and it has to change, or if there is like a collision in a relationship and it has to change shape, what happens next? And that's something that I've been asking myself in my life as well, because there have been a lot of things that have changed as I have changed. So, you know, you decide you want to become more free. What happens then to your relationship with, you know, your friends, or your relationship with your parents, or your relationship with the people who have known you for a long time? Those are things that I was thinking about. And so I guess that ended up showing up on the page as well and like resonating with you.
Right.
But I don't know that I was writing it with that in mind as something I wanted to convey.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's the first story, the first chapter is called Good Boy, which is which began life as a standalone piece that was this kind of grew from. And there's a line toward the very end of the last paragraph of the story or the chapter, and it says, "No one, I decided there and then, is allowed to kill me twice." And that has struck me every single time I've read the manuscript, and it struck me again when I was going through the actual finished book to sort of talk about this, is that, you know, it's a little bit like the first time, shame on me, the second time, whatever that sort of, you know, in the sense that I'm not going to go through this again. I have decided my journey, I've decided my route, and I'm going to take that. And there will be consequences. And that, to me, is one of the interesting things about these characters, is that they are willing to accept the consequences of their actions, good and bad. And some of the characters, some of the people who are not necessarily in the center of the story, that's a problem for them. Particularly for, and I know I'm spending too much time talking about them, the parents. But the idea is that it's like you know, the expectation of what a parent might have for what a child's life is like is not met by the child for very definite reasons, and somehow that's a problem that the parent has to grapple with on their own.
I wonder, because I think it was at the Abuja event. So the tour started in Nigeria. There was a Lagos event and then an Abuja event. And at the Abuja event, someone asked me who I'm thinking of as like the ideal reader for necessary fiction right now. And I said that I am curious to find out like how parents experience this book. Do you know what I mean? Like how parents who are grappling with, you know, their own journeys with raising their children, how they would feel about some of the stories that are in here, you know, like, so I wonder how it struck you as a parent reading it, and what resonated or what was uncomfortable.
Okay, a lot was uncomfortable.
Okay.
No, which is good. It's, you know, you think, oh, you know, I did not react the way parents, some of these parents here, but in the sense that, you know, oh, you wake up and you realize, oh, my child has chosen a partner or a relationship that is not something that I either expected or wanted them to choose. And how do I grapple with that as a parent? I think that's also what I think was interesting was you have the other way, which is a grown child who realizes, you know what, the parent that I had is not living the life I expected them to, and how does that make me feel about the relationship between my parents, or the fact that there might be, the sort of who you are is. This to me is interesting. The evolution of who these characters are is fascinating. And if you I hope you read this book, I hope you buy this book. Is the idea that everybody on the page is in a constant sort of dynamism of evolving into somebody who at the beginning of the book, and they're not the same person at the end of the book. And that to me is an amazing creative feat you pulled off. But the idea that we're all on this journey doing our own thing, but we're doing our own thing with people. We're doing our own thing with, and also we are, in some ways, this is probably a terrible image, but I thought of lobsters when I was reading this book. As you grow, lobsters toss off their shells, and they become something different. And that's very much, at least for me, I thought of these characters who toss off the shells that they grew up with, the expectation they had, because they needed to become something else. And I'll be doing a series of self-help lectures on this after we have this conversation. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was when you're talking about Lagos being a setting, could this novel have been set anyplace else? Could it have been in New York? Would you have set it in New York? Or did it have to be where it have to be in Lagos, in Nigeria?
I think there's a very specific sense of, like, it's almost like being boiled. Like that's what it feels like to make choices, to love, to be in Lagos. And also there's the fact that a lot of these characters are queer, and in Nigeria there's the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. And so there are ways you need to be very careful. If I wrote this novel in New York, set in New York, I think what would have happened is their stakes would have been different, so it would be a different book. Because even when I lived in New York, I was a different kind of queer person. And so I would say that setting does influence / affect our stakes. And this book being a book about stakes and trying to figure out, what do I care about? What am I willing to give up? What am I willing to fight for? I think it would be a completely different book if I set it anywhere else.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your process. The characters come first. Do you know where they're going when you sit down to write them?
Not really, but a huge part of my process is actually just asking questions.
Of the characters?
Yes. And I do that sometimes by journaling, sometimes by just going on long drives. And so if, for instance, I'm thinking about a character called May, who's a DJ in the book.
A great character, by the way.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about May and her relationship with music and being a DJ, I would just spend a lot of time curating music, thinking through music, thinking about how I like to experience music. And so I would ask her questions like, would you play this with this?
Oh, interesting.
Would you play Sade in the same set as Frank Ocean? Would you play Lagbaja? Or are you the kind of person who would drop 50 Cent as part of your set? And so you get I get to learn a lot about these characters based on their answers to that.
So do you ask yourself the questions, or do you ask the characters the questions?
I ask the characters the questions. So for instance, something becomes clear to me first. It was clear to me that May was a masculine lesbian living in Lagos, and that she struggled with relational intimacy, and that she struggled with figuring out how to be, masculine without being a man. So I knew that about her, but then there were other things to know. And so when I get the foundational information, the character is already a person.
Okay.
So then I can ask direct questions like, are you the kind of masked lesbian who would wear this? Like,
And they would respond.
yeah, like it becomes clear to me because if for instance I already wrote a part where May speaks to her mom and I can see her fear, I can tell when something doesn't ring true. Like, so if I ask a question and she's like, oh yeah, I would absolutely wear that. Or, if this guy did this, I would do that. I can often find clues into the kind of person I'm writing about based on what they've done in other scenes. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does. So you are able to be both, if you will, internal, like the percolating stuff in here, and then also external in the sense that, okay, because they did X here, then Y would happen there. In the sense that because of the kind of evolution of the character, I'm now seeing them in a different situation, in a different framework or whatever, and how they relate.
Yeah, and I think that's what creates the layers, because otherwise it's easy to write into a stereotype.
Yes.
Like if you're thinking masked lesbian in Lagos, like then you start dressing the character in a specific way. Like,
Right.
And sometimes that's not true. Sometimes this person is a masculine lesbian who wears lingerie.
Right. When do you know you're done?
When do I know I'm done?
When I yank the manuscript from your hands? Is that when it is?
I think I know I'm done when I have all my links. So I don't always like tie up loose ends, but if, for instance, I'm writing about a group of people and I've written and written and written and there's no one else there's no other points to touch,
Yes.
then I know I'm done.
My response is similar to that in that I know I'm finished editing when I have no more questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of, oh yeah, I don't really, I'm good. I'm good. Do you find in terms of how you write, that are you better with, do you write the same time every day? Does it come through in a burst? Do you change your behavior when you're in the middle of writing a book?
I drive a lot when I'm writing a book.
Drive a lot.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
drive
you
for
don't write
hours.
and drive. I
No,
hope
no,
that
no.
is not, okay.
No, I drive a lot when I'm writing. I drive for like 6 hours.
Do you?
Yeah, and just like go and go and go.
And do you
with
sort of
music.
talk, or is it
No.
all internal?
It's all internal. I just blast music like at high volume. And so, yeah, that's what I do. I create like a container that I can be in that moves. And so I can see things, like see the sun setting, see people moving. And so that helps me because then I'm not in a space where I'm just like at my laptop all the time waiting for words to come. So I kind of like keep myself in a state of like continuous movement so that by the time I get home, there is something to talk about. There's a new thought I have because of something I saw that was not within my control.
Right.
And driving is a really great way to observe like the world and see things that you didn't put there. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
You came across it without pre-planning, if you will.
Exactly, yeah. So you could drive the same route every day and you would see like different things.
Well, you can't
each
put your
time.
foot in the same river twice, kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. So so driving really helps me when I'm writing.
Do you have a really good memory? Because my fear would be hour one, I had a great idea that 5 hours later, I'm like, what was that great idea I had 5 hours ago?
If I have a sentence or like a piece of dialogue, I just park and like
good.
write it.
Well, I mean, are you one of those writers who has like a pad, or is it all on your phone? What I'm wondering is how the the process of kind of collecting the stardust, how that happens.
For me, that happens on my laptop mostly. But if I'm like on the move, then that will happen on my phone in my notes app.
Well, I will say that it was always fascinating to kind of learn where Eloghosa was during the process. It's like, well, I'm in Nigeria, I'm in Nairobi, I'm in New York, I'm somewhere over someplace else. I mean, are you peripatetic because you need that?
Yes.
I
think I would go insane if I stayed in one place for a very long time.
What would you consider a very long time? 20 minutes?
No, I think like 7 months, you know? I think I need to move every 6 months.
And do you know where you're going?
I mean, I have to because you have to.
for the logistic purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are you somebody who, I mean, obviously the books you've written already have very much kind of these kind of strong three-dimensional characters are part of do you keep a lot of, for lack of a better term, research materials around, or is it all, not all, is it mostly external so that you can kind of take notes, or do you sit down and Google something or have books that you kind of consult to find out something?
So far, my Vagabonds and Necessary Fiction didn't really require research in that way. I think what I needed more than research was rigor. And so, I would just block out hours at night and do the writing. Or even if I wasn't writing, I would keep the night open.
So you write
as
at night?
As a practice, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just go to bed at 8 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, does that happen when you're not writing? Or in other words, is this a particular ritual that you do as when you're writing, when you're in the middle of something?
I do it more intentionally when I'm writing, but mostly I'm quite nocturnal, so yeah.
Always been like that? I'm learning so much listening, talking to her.
Yeah, for the most part.
Because I'm the other way. I'm absurdly early.
I know.
When you edit. I know. Eloghosa's like, oh, please stop him from emailing me in the middle of the night. I beg you.
How did you find the process of editing Necessary Fiction?
Well, the thing that I found I should step back. One of the ways that I, as an editor, try to approach, and I've told Eloghosa this, I see my job as helping you pull out of yourself the best book you can write. And to that end, I try to modify my editing style and behavior to make it easier for you. Mm-hmm. And I also see myself as an editor as being a really interested reader who knows absolutely nothing about whether it's what's the characters in Necessary Fiction or in. I edited a novel about the attempted assassination of Bob Marley called A Brief History of Seven Killings. So anyway, my goal is to try to make sure that none of you people who will read this book will have any questions as you read. So I try to anticipate, okay, there might be a question here, or maybe this isn't clear there, or maybe they can say it in a more dynamic, clear, emotionally, affecting way. So what I loved about editing this novel was, first of all, your willingness to listen to somebody else have an opinion about your creation, and I think that's really important. Understanding that you can create something, but you've written this to be read. Mm-hmm. By an idiot like me, by other people in the world who maybe have had similar experiences or who've not understood this at all, this experience at all. So what I found was very early on, you have a very clear ear for each of these characters that you've written. I didn't have any difficulty understanding who is who on the page. Although I did say, because there are so many of them, having a list of characters and how they're related is not a terrible idea. And I think it's actually a helpful one.
Yeah.
So in terms of the editing process for me giving notes to you, what did you find helpful and what did you think, this guy's an idiot?
The cast of characters really, it was a really good idea. I was worried about us having too much front matter, but when I put this in, I was like, okay, I can see how this
would be helpful, right?
Also, because you had pulled that off successfully with Marlon's A Brief History, and I found that like amazing because I mean it's 600 pages, 600 and something pages.
It's a lot
long.
of pages, yes.
Yeah, but it really helped me to like come back to
Yes.
my understanding, just being able to refer to the page and like pick up, the characters. So I think that really helped to make this book a better book. And also your edits on a line level, like sometimes, when you'd ask me questions about why this sentence was following the other,
Right.
it helped me understand that some things were not as clear as I thought they were.
Okay, that's an interesting question as a writer who's obviously in these characters' lives, and is that sometimes it's hard to know that, okay, what I think is crystal clear is in fact not.
Yeah. What informs your editing style? Like in terms of, because you have been doing this for a while, like 20 years.
Really?
20 years
Right.
is a while. And so
Right.
like there's, I don't know, like some editors are very much like, no, I know what I'm looking for in a book and
Right.
I know what I want this book to become
Right.
after I've read it. And you're like more collaborative.
Absolutely.
And more like led by what the author is trying to
Yes.
do.
It's all about.
And so I'm curious about why that is your style.
It's all about the author's intention. It's like
Okay.
how can I help? This is not why we're here, but as a baby editor, I edited newspaper columns and comic strips for a newspaper syndication company. So one of the things I learned to do as an early age was trying to make the joke of a comic strip it might be 5 words as punchy as possible. So understanding that you have, you are trying to do X with this character, or me asking questions about maybe we can try to create a thread or a braid through the various relations that the characters have. Those are the kinds of questions that I am a reader am interested in knowing about. I guess it was Toni Morrison who said you should write the book you want to read. And for me, this is, I want to edit the book I want to read. So I think the idea that and I'm drawn to, as I said, stories I've not read before. So I want you to be, I want the road in front of you to be as smooth as possible so that you can kind of, go. And I do that both with kind of big picture stuff and also, as you said, on the level of the line, I edit every manuscript, every version of every manuscript twice, once on the screen and once on the page, because it's my experience, because I was born in the 20th century, that I experience a book, a magazine, whatever it is, differently on paper than I do on the computer. So things occur to me a lot the same, and that's in both versions, and that's great. But when one doesn't, I think, oh, why is that? So I try to be as intentional with an author and with you as possible. If that's
It does.
Okay. I didn't make this. I want to make this sound about me. So what you're saying essentially is, writing is not a linear process for you. Did
Yeah.
you write parts and then figured out how they all fit together?
Oh yeah, like it wasn't written chronologically at all.
Did it turn out the way you expected?
Whoa. Okay.
No? Is that a hard no?
It did actually.
Okay.
In some ways, and in other ways, it is surprising.
Well, Zadie Smith talks about she doesn't know what's going to happen in her novels when
Yeah.
she starts writing. And I didn't know, that struck me as, for me, unusual. And I think the more and more people, they don't necessarily know.
Yeah, I didn't know what I wanted it to be. I just knew I needed to get it out of my body.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Did you find that, let me step, what surprised you most about the book when you finished it?
That it physically hurt. Like I had physical pain in the process of writing the book, which didn't happen with Vagabonds. That felt more like a creative project. This felt grueling on my physical body. That was surprising.
And a little scary, it sounds like.
It was scary because I used to get these weird chest pains, and I thought it was something like physical. Right. So I went to the doctor and I kept on checking it out, and then it went away after I finished the book.
Wow, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just a writer. That's pretty much the message. That's amazing. When you were writing, and I know you're talking about cars and driving and stuff, are there authors or books that you sort of turn to, not necessarily to crib, but just sort of inspiration? Did you ever think, oh, I need to read?
I can't really read when I'm writing.
Okay.
Because it feels like I can't read. I feel too full. I feel like there's static. So I can't see what I'm reading, really. So no, not really.
Do you have a guilty pleasure that you do when you're reading? I mean, when you're writing? Like, I don't know, something that you... Do you binge watch something when you're not writing, or do you cook, or do you jog? Is there something you do to kind of kick the cobwebs out of your head?
Oh, I have lots of coloring books.
Good. That's interesting because that's interesting to me because that strikes me as a very precise experience to sit and color.
Yeah, airplane mode and color.
Because these characters' lives are really messy. So that's good. I think it's very interesting that the precision of coloring requires you to stay in the lines. And these people are not staying in the lines. Am I the only one who ever came up with that observation?
Well, I actually feel, I actually don't think about lines when I'm coloring.
So do you?
It feels like just like not thinking. Really? Yeah, it's one of the times when I'm not thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's clear we have very different creative processes. Does anybody have any questions for Eloghosa, by the way? Anybody?
Thank you so much. I'd just like to share real quick that I discovered one of the original meanings of the word beauty going back to its foundations. So beauty originally, and you're showing it, has the sense of meaning the act of responding to your own calling. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you, I've been working on writing for a long time, is there anything that is special that touches you that's sort of like just magical about the word? And, sometimes they say all we see is a face or an expression, but your feelings about, like who is that invisible person inside of us? If you kind of like look in there or something.
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Is there an inner writer? Is there an inner person who is doing the creative?
Well, also inside a person, because what you see on the face has almost nothing to do with what's inside of you, really, your personality, your character, who you are. It's invisible in a way.
Is there an inner writer?
Maybe you could just tell me how you feel about the word itself as being something magical and special. I mean, it's been 50,000
When you say word, do you mean language or storytelling?
Does he mean beauty? Because he started by talking about beauty.
I think, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you talking about the idea of we're using language to kind of connect with what's in here out to get it out into the world?
I think part of writing or storytelling is giving like legibility to what's intangible, like what can't be seen by anyone, what is not yet not yet tangible. And so I think that in that way, language is like a tool of making something that feels surreal have form. So like, for instance, in the process of writing this book, I knew certain things about how I wanted it to feel when it was done. And I didn't know how to get there, but I feel like that's something that you can only do like by writing. So yeah, that's what I'd say. I'd say that language is a tool of making like a concept or a feeling or a realm more tangible. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for sharing your opinions. I just wanna say I have the same thing. Like I have to on the bus or drive to have to meditate, like to keep writing or keep reading the same thing like that. Then another thing is I cannot write if I don't have any emotional moment in a day. For example, like either like angry or very exciting. Otherwise, if the day is very plain, I feel like I don't have any energy to write. So do you have any suggestions on that? Because not every day like that. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, I think there are different ways to get excitement that don't always mean putting the strain on your own personal life. Like sometimes your day doesn't look different from the day before it. But then there are things like films that you can watch. There are things like music, which I think is magical. Like, you know, discovering new music, I think, can open up something surprising inside you. You can conjure a feeling, actually, by listening to new artists, listening to songs in languages that you don't speak or you don't understand. And so I would suggest that. I would suggest that if you're struggling with like hitting a wall or, you know, repetition, then what you can do is like break out using art and media. So if you don't want to read, because then that's also words, you can listen to music, you can watch a film. And so that's what I would suggest. I would suggest consuming more of what you wouldn't usually.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My question was based on your writing process. So you mentioned that you drive a lot when you're writing. And I was just very curious as to if this changes based on your geographical location and like why driving specifically. So I know Lagos is like notoriously unwalkable, but say you were writing in New York City, would you also choose driving as like your means of creative outlet, or would you do walking, which is also like a great form of getting to know a place and seeing people?
When I lived in New York, I was on dance floors almost every night. So that would, like, I guess it's also, yeah, I guess that's actually the thread, like movement of some kind, something that isn't sitting down and waiting. So yeah, when I lived here, it was dancing, and when I'm in Nigeria, it's driving. Yeah.
Do you drive in Nigeria, like, out of the city? In other words, are there routes you take? Is it all?
Not that far, no.
Yeah.
I don't do like interstate driving, no, because it's also dangerous.
Well, there is that.
Yeah.
Do you find that the weather matters, the traffic matters, the music you listen? In other words, is the environment more important than not more, as important as what's going on in your head when you're driving?
Well, there's always a playlist. I'm always playing music in the car. So there's that. If I want to feel a feeling, like for instance, if I need to get some sadness out, I know what to play. If I need to like hear my head, I know what to play. Like for instance, when I'm trying to figure out something, I just play jazz. Other times when I need to like get out of my head, I play Afro beats, and that like.
This is fascinating that you know what the medicine is.
Yeah.
To get what that's fascinating. So when you sort of thinking about it and the idea of like, okay, this is where what I need to do, but you don't know. There's not a specific problem for you to solve. It's like just this is where I need to go emotionally, intellectually. Fascinating.
Yeah.
You make this sound way too easy, I gotta say. It's like, oh, just drive for 6 hours and you'll write a book. No, but it's interesting that you know your process so clearly. Is that trial and error? Has always when you were living in New York and dancing, and now and when you're in Nigeria, the idea of driving, are those processes you learned, or do they always seem to be with you?
I started driving at 16, and I fell in love with driving when I was 19, and so that was something that was already in my life as a way of like sorting out my mind. Mm-hmm. And when I started writing, I just like amped it up. So if, for instance, I had more in my mind to sort, so the drives just got longer, but it's actually it's a passion / hobby / but it's not really like a writing aid in that way. Like it's more a thing that I would do regardless, but it helps me in my mind, and that's where the work is anyway. Right. So it's then now linked to writing, but it's something I would do regardless.
Do you drive at night or during the day?
At night mostly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, this is so fascinatingly foreign from anything that
I also drive right before the sun sets, so that I can see that.
Do you drive fast?
Why do you ask?
Please speak into the microphone. That's fascinating. Okay, good. Now, when you were living in New York and going, we were going to dance clubs? Is that where you were dancing?
Yeah.
And because you can control the playlist in the car in Nigeria, you couldn't control the playlist at the club. Did that matter?
Well, I'll just follow DJs I loved, and wherever they were playing, I'll be there. Like, I think that's a really good way to do it. If you're trying to roam around the city, just follow the DJ you trust.
Follow the DJ you trust.
Yeah.
These are life lessons. I'm learning all sorts of interesting things today.
Folks, that's all the time we have.
I'm sorry.
So thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you.
There are books for sale in the lobby, and Eloghosa, if you would be so kind as to join and sign some, that would be great. So you can come outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jake.
My pleasure.
And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.